Hey guys, so today we're going to look at some different ways to convert units in the customary system of measurement, or we also call it the standard system of measurement. So we've talked about capacity, which is quarts and pints and cups and gallons. Later we'll talk about weight with ounces and pounds and tons. And today we're kind of still focusing on standard units of length, which include inches, feet, yards, and miles. Today we're mostly going to focus on inches and feet. So some different ways we can convert, which of course means to change units from one to another. We're not changing the amount, we just want to change the way they're represented or measured. So I want you to draw this chart in your notebook. You might call it a function table or just kind of a little chart I want you to draw. So on the left, I've labeled that column feet, and on the right, I've labeled that column the inches. And then I want you to just break it into some sections, some rows about like this, all the way down. If you need to pause the video and catch up, you can do that. So on the left, I'm going to start out with, I guess I'll use this color, 1 foot, and as you know, that equals 12 inches. If I have a ruler, as you used on Friday when we measured objects around the room, a ruler is 1 foot. It also contains 12 inches. So if I have 2 feet or 2 rulers, I would essentially have 12 plus 12, or I would have 24 inches. So I'm going to put for 2 feet, that equals 24 inches. If I had 3 feet, I would have 12 plus another ruler, another 12, which 12 plus 12 plus 12, or 12 times 3 is the same thing as 36. And we could keep going. We could fill out this chart and keep going all the way down. We're not going to do that. We're going to stop with 3 feet, 36 inches right now. So on the left, on the side with feet, you should notice there's a pattern of increasing by 1. Okay, 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 plus 1 is 3. So we've kind of got a pattern of adding 1. And then on the right side, we're increasing by 12 each time because we're adding 12 additional inches for every foot. So 12 plus 12 is 24, 24 plus 12 is 36. And we could keep going. That would be a pattern that you could use. I could keep adding 1 to add to my feet. I could continue to add 12 to add to my inches, but sometimes you're not going to be able to draw this whole chart and keep going by 12s and counting by 12s. So if you look at your chart, there are other patterns that you should notice from the left side to the right side. When I'm converting from feet to inches, or to get from 1 to 12, I would basically multiply by 12. To get from 2 to 24, I would also multiply by 12. And to get from 3 to 36, I would also multiply by 12. So that's when I'm moving to the right. So I'm going to draw a little arrow to the right on each of those. And hopefully that's big enough for you to see. I'm sorry. So I'm multiplying by 12 to move from the left to the right. And then if I were to look at it the other way, if I were to start on the right side and move to the left side, I'm going to draw my left arrows. I could say, well, you're taking this number and you're breaking it up into groups, or you're dividing by 12 to get from this side to this side. So I'm going to say divide by 12. 12 divided by 12 is 1. 24 divided by 12 is 2. And 36 divided by 12 is 3. So if I'm moving from right to left, I'm dividing. And that's another set of patterns you could look at with this table. Now, we've talked about this before, and we actually had a little saying that goes with it. We'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to erase this just so I have room. But when I'm going from feet to inches, I'm starting with a larger unit. So I'm going to put large, or big would be a synonym. And I'm moving to a smaller unit. I'm moving to inches. So I'm going large to small, And when I did that, when I went from feet to inches, I multiplied. Multiplied by 12 in this case because there are 12 inches per foot. And then when I move to the right, I'm going from inches, or the smaller unit, to feet, which is the larger unit. And in that case, I ended up dividing. Okay, to get from the smaller unit to the larger unit. Now, we had a saying that goes with this that Miss Snow taught me, and I taught you guys. Big to small, large is the same thing as big. Large to small, multiply all. Okay, so we multiplied in those circumstances. Small to large, or you could think of it as small to big, divide the pig. So that's another way you can remember it, okay? So for example, if I had, we're just gonna skip some space. If I have 10 feet and I wanna know how many inches that is, it's not gonna be super practical to add 12, add 12, add 12, add 12, all the way till I get down to 10. So I can use my pattern. I know that if I have 10 feet, for every foot, there are 12 inches in there. I have to account for that. Going from feet to inches was big to small, and I multiplied by 12. So 10 times 12 would be 120, which just means in 10 feet, there are 120 inches. Now the same works in reverse. If I was given a large amount of inches and I didn't want to draw this whole chart and go all the way to the number given, let's say I had 156 inches. It's going to take forever. If I sit there and say plus 12, plus 12, plus 12, it's going to take forever. But I know that in my chart, I at least have the first part of the chart, and I can see that when I moved from the right side to the left side, I divided by 12. Or I was going from small to big, divide the pig. So I divided by 12. So if we do 156 divided by 12, and I've already worked that out, but we'll do it again. I'm going to flip the page here. 156 divided by 12. Okay, I'm going to divide with the grouping method. You can do the standard algorithm. It's completely up to you. I know that at least 10 groups of 12 will go into this number. 10 times 12 is 120. I subtract. I'm left with 36. I know that at least 2 groups of 12 will go into 36 because I know 12 times 2 is 24. I subtract. I get 12. Well, sorry. And then I know that one more group of 12 will go into 12. And 12 times 1 is 12. I subtract. I have no remainder. Okay? So on the right, I ended up with 10 groups plus 2 groups plus 1 group, which is a total of 13 groups. So going back to my chart, I know that 156 inches is the same thing as 13 feet. And that's just a lot simpler than continuing this pattern. But it helped that I started with a pattern and I know whether to multiply or divide. So you can always use this little table, this function table, this chart. You can always use that to kind of help with your conversions or changing from one unit to another. Okay, so another way that I wanted to review with you, and I know that we've done this before a couple times in class. You may not quite understand it. I just wanted to give you something else to work with to add to your toolbox when you're converting measurements, okay? So this other way, I called it just fractions or equal fractions set up next to each other. I actually watched a video a while ago and they called it the box method. So if you ever hear of the box method, I guess this is what they're talking about. But if you set up 2 fractions next to each other, 2 fraction bars, and I want you to of course do this on your notebook paper as well. And in the video, the only difference that they had, you know, I had drawn the fractions, they just drew a box around it and then split it down the middle. So you can draw the box or you can just leave it with the fractions. It's completely up to you. But it's the same idea It's used to convert from inches to feet or feet to inches or really any unit to another unit. So let's say, for example, in my problem that I have 192 inches and I want to know how many feet that equals, okay? So write that problem under your chart, 192 inches. I want to know how many feet that equals, and feet is abbreviated with FT. So I'll look at my two units that I'm working with. I have inches and I have feet, and I'm gonna place those on my fraction bars. It doesn't matter which one's on the top or which one's on the bottom. Okay, so I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna put feet on the top and inches on the bottom. IN is the abbreviation for inches. So on this fraction bar, I also need to do the same thing. Feet on the top or the numerator, inches on the bottom or the denominator. And in my first fraction or my first part of the box, I'm just going to put the relationship between these two units. I know that in 1 foot, I have 12 inches. Okay, I'm just putting the conversion scale or the relationship right there. So in my problem, I don't know how many feet. That's what I'm trying to find. I might represent that with a question mark. You could put an X, like it's called a variable, you're not sure. You could just circle it, whatever you want to do. Leave it blank, that's fine. My problem tells me that I have 192 inches. So I need to figure out, if 1 foot is 12 inches, how many feet are 192 inches? So the way I would do that is I'm going to cross multiply where I can, which means I'm multiplying diagonally, okay? So the bottom and the top would be a diagonal, but I can't multiply 12 times question mark. That's not going to give me any extra information. I can go with this diagonal, top and bottom, and I can multiply those two numbers, okay? 1 times 192, of course, is 192. Don't have a place to write it. Okay, 192. And then I'm going to divide this by the number I have left over. I can't divide by a question mark, so I'm going to divide it by 12 to figure out how many feet I have. Okay, so I'm going to just switch pages here. 192 divided by 12. We'll do this one, we'll solve this one with the standard algorithm. So 12 will not go into 1. A group of 12 will go into 19 once. 12 times 1 is 12. I subtract. I kind of ignore this part right here. I'm just looking at the digits I'm working with. 9 minus 2 is 7. 1 minus 1 is 0. I'm going to bring down my 2. 12 will go into 72 6 times. 6 times 12 is 72, and I subtract, and I have 0 left over. So 16 is my quotient, which means in my problem, 192 inches was the same as 16 feet. I also could have gone back to what we've done before, what we just talked about. I had a smaller unit, I had inches, and I wanted to find the bigger unit. So small to big, divide the pig. So I could have just taken this number, divided by 12, because there are 12 inches in a foot, okay? Now the same works if you're going from a larger unit to a smaller unit. Same thing will work if you use the box method. And this is really if you're unsure whether or not to multiply or to divide a problem, it helps to just make this box, set up these fractions, and then that way you're always going to cross multiply and then divide by the extra. So it kind of helps guide you along. Okay, so I'm going to set up my equal fractions, and I'm going to go ahead and put those in a box. Okay, let's say this time that I have 17 feet, so I've got the larger unit, and I want to know how many inches that will equal. If I have 17 feet, I want to know how many inches that will equal. So same thing, I'm going to first put my conversion scale. Okay, I'm gonna put feet to inches. I know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot, which means over here, I need to have feet on the top and inches on the bottom. I was given 17 feet in my problem, and I need to find out how many inches that equals. That's what I'm trying to figure out, okay? All right, so I'm gonna cross multiply. I cannot multiply 1 with a question mark, okay? Top and bottom are the diagonals. I can't multiply. I can multiply these 2 diagonal numbers, a bottom with a top, 17 times 12. 17 times 12. You better be doing this with me and checking my work so that I can help you check your work. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, placeholder. 1 times 7 is 7, 1 times 1 is 1. I add those numbers together, and you should get 204. Okay, so I'm gonna take that number 204, and then I divide by my leftover number, which is just 1, and anything divided by 1 is gonna be itself. So 204 divided by 1 is still gonna be 204. So basically 17 feet is the same as 204 inches. And again, looking at it another way, I had feet, I was converting to inches, so I had big and I was going to small, big to small, multiply all. So basically I ended up multiplying 17 times 12 because 12 is the number of inches in a foot. And then yes, I did divide, but I just divided by 1, so it kept the number the same. Okay, now this also works if you have an uneven number. Like for example, if you had 200, do this example. Oh no, okay. Let's say you had 201 inches and we wanted to convert that to feet. You're not gonna end up with a nice pretty whole number in that situation. We saw a while ago that 192 inches is 16 feet, and then 17 feet is 204 inches. So 201 is kind of right in between those, not exactly in between, but it's in between those numbers. So you know your answer is gonna be between 16 and 17. It's not gonna be a nice pretty number, but the same rules still apply. Okay, if I have, I should have just erased the whole box. That would have been easier and faster. All right, here we go. Okay, inches and feet go in my box. 12 inches is 1 foot. I have 201 inches. I want to know how many feet. So when I cross multiply, I would be multiplying 201 times 1, which is 201, and then I divide it by 12. That's not going to give you a pretty number. And once we deal with dividing with decimals and multiplying with decimals, we'll be able to do that more easily. But even if you have a calculator, 201 divided by 12, it's still going to give you the answer. It just might not always be a whole number. So in this case, 201 divided by 12 is 16 75 hundredths. Excuse me, 16 75 hundredths feet. So that just means we have more than 16 feet, less than 17 feet, okay? So this method really works with all numbers. We're just focusing on whole numbers right now, okay? Hope this helps.